everyone, I'm Lindley Gooden. A very, very warm welcome to Future of Utilities, the online series. Now today we'll be broadcasting live and for a couple of hours every single Thursday for the next 3 weeks to discuss practical steps and ideas for the utilities industry as we adapt to the current crisis and beyond. Now, if you're watching this, you've made it onto GRIP. Congratulations. This is our AI-driven online event platform where content and networking happen side by side. Now, this is where it's all happening. So we have 3 full episodes jam-packed with live leaders forums, interactive panels, and online networking opportunities too. So please do make sure that you maximize your time by booking in meetings now, adding sessions to your personal schedule, and of course, having your say during the live Q&As. You are very much part of our time together. There really is so much to do while you're with us. It's hopefully as near as possible to meeting your colleagues and your contacts in person in one place. So great to have you with us. Let's look at the portal. Let's do some housekeeping to start with. If you haven't already, take some time to explore the event agenda. You can create your own personal schedule by clicking the Add to Session button or the calendar icon too. You'll find your personal schedule under the My Schedule section on the left-hand bar. Clues in the title there. This will also include your scheduled meetings and on networking, a great feature. It's open right now every Thursday and Friday over the course of our episodes. Right, so do you see a person or company you'd like to connect with? Easy. Click on that Interested button or click directly on the Meet button. Now, once you're connected, start a chat or have a meeting. GRIP also does some of the hard work for you, some of the clever stuff. Head straight to the Recommended for You section to see who matches what you're looking for. Or see who swiped right. That's right, swiped right on you in the Interested in You section, also on the left-hand bar. So some dating going on there. If you have any questions throughout the day, head to the Future of Utilities hub and send a message using the Message Future of Utilities button. So great to have you with us. A huge thank you to our sponsors who make these events possible. Have a look at some great pages. Their hubs are available from the home page where you'll find prize draws, exclusive content, and team members that you can connect with directly. Now, we are 100% live today, so you can send in your questions throughout in the box on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll put them to our panelists. We've got lots to cover and to meet our panelists, so let's begin. Okay, first up this morning, we'll be looking at improving customer journeys to deliver excellence when it really matters the most. It's crucial that companies interact with their consumers with empathy, with care, with concern at this difficult time. So customer journeys need to be renovated, they need to be rejuvenated in order to adapt to the very different surroundings we now work within. You may well have already been doing that. I'm sure that's been part of the COVID approach. Now, today we're focusing on how to redesign communications to focus on care and connection. So let's get into it by meeting our fantastic panelists for the first session. First of all, Greg Jackson. Hello, Greg.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. Where are you? I see a background. Octopus Energy, I see.
Yeah, I'm in Soho. I've been the only person in the office for about 3 months, but finally, people are beginning to drip back in to meet needs.
We're glad to keep you company. Greg is the CEO of Octopus Energy, so great to have you with us. Next up, we have Philippe Commaret. Hello, Philippe.
Hi, Lindley. I'm very pleased to meet you.
Great to have you here too. Philippe is the Managing Director, Customers at EDF Energy. Great to have you here with us.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Joe Brownless. Joe, hello.
Hi, good morning, Lindley.
Joe is the Director of Customer Operations at Affinity Water. Wonderful to have you with us too. And there I see Lissa Balmer. Hello, Lissa.
Morning, Lindley.
Great to have you here. Lissa is the SME Customer Director at Wave. And last but not least, we have Neil Greathead. Hello, Neil.
Morning, Lindley.
Neil is the Chief Customer Officer at Smart Communications. How are you doing today, Neil?
I'm very well, thank you. Looking forward to this session.
Excellent. On that subject, we have lots to cover, and I'm sure that you have your own questions and comments for us to put to our panel, and you can do that. Send them in through the live Q&A field on your screen. Do that anytime. We want to hear from you. We'll get to them as many as we can towards the end of the discussion. But let's get started. It is 10:05. Session 1 is all about delivering excellent customer journeys when it matters the most. As we've learned in 2020, that's never more important than when customers interact with a service provider during times of crisis. It can obviously have an instantaneous but also a lingering effect on their sense of trust and loyalty. So Neil, kick us off. How do you think customer interactions have changed since before the virus, if we can remember back that far?
Yeah, I think there's a few dimensions that we're seeing in the marketplace at the moment. I think overarching, we're seeing our customers are looking for reassurance when they interact with us during this time of crisis. We're also seeing from a business side an acceleration of digital transformation and digital innovation projects because everything now needs to be kind of digital. And within that, specifically for communication, we're seeing kind of multiple channels of communication emerging within these digital strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lissa, there will be lots of shared things that we've all experienced, but what have you experienced? What have you seen in terms of the interaction changing?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much to what Neil's just said around kind of the way in which customers interact with us. It's taken them kind of onto different channels. Their channel of choice has changed, whereas before they might have instantly gone to the phone. They're now using web chat, but they also want that reassurance. They want to know that there's someone there that cares and is going to work with them to help them get through this.
Yeah. We won't probably contradict each other on this subject, but Joe, what about you? There has been a shift to digital. There has also been that personal touch that's been very much needed. Call centers have been involved. What have you seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, personalization is key, but I think during this time, emotions have been at play. It's not just customers' functional needs, but their emotional needs as well. And I think at this time, what we've particularly seen at Affinity, and I'm sure everybody has, is customers wanting, I need you to know me and what matters to me and what's important to me. So my circumstances, vulnerable circumstances, do I know what vulnerable circumstances are? So it's actually that deep personal connection around understand me to then help me. Because what we've definitely found throughout this time, particularly with customers, is around actually that they may not realize they need help and support. And it might not just be now, but it's actually in the future. So if we think about actually what could happen over the coming months, actually how do we support customers now to start to signpost?
Briefly, Philippe, what do you think? Being such a large company, there'll be such a range of customers and a range of needs, but are there any trends that have come through that we can take forward, that the approaches that you've taken that you can take forward to be better with customers?
I think that what we have seen during the crisis is that especially the most vulnerable customers, understandably, were very anxious, and they were needed, in fact, to interact with a very human touch, and not only through digital channels, but also with physical contacts. So
absolutely. And Greg, what do you think? Tie us off on this one. Are there any surprises? Were there any surprises in terms of what happened, or was it as you'd expect? It's just the volume was high.
Oh, it's interesting. I think actually it was one of those times when you couldn't know what to expect. And the most important thing was really beginning to think hard about the kind of questions customers would have and ensure that we were getting ahead of that rather than allowing very quickly, complex issues to build up. But I think a couple of quick thoughts. I think Philippe was beginning to segue into a really important topic, which is I've heard a lot about digital during this time. I don't think digital was being driven by customers. I think it was driven by companies that weren't able to meet customers' needs through call centers or whatever other human interaction they should have. So let's be honest with ourselves that move to digital, first of all, wasn't necessarily a customer-centric move. It was just, the first resort in an emergency. Because, as Philippe said, the human touch has been so important in a world where I think needs have been so very different. You've got customers who are losing their jobs, worse than that, whose health, or even, we'll all have experienced customers who sadly died, right through to customers who are staying at home. If they've got a big house, they don't have young kids, they're not paying for commuting, they're not paying for lunches, their life is possibly, they're not paying for nights out, their life's very different. And I think that has really required humanity. And I think the companies that have been very quick to understand that diverse spread and then to be able to really put humans who can empathize and talk to them have been the ones that have helped most.
It's absolutely right. From a human level, of course, that makes sense to all of us, actually, and we'll have neighbors in those situations. There are businesses in those situations. But Lissa, things have changed a bit. I mean, first of all, it was all hands to the deck early on and trying to help customers through the initial stages. But we're moving into a different phase now, where it's a longer term need for support. What are you seeing in terms of the shift in emphasis and where we're about to go, do you think?
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of trepidation. I think a lot of people thought that kind of, this would kind of be here and then it would be gone and everybody would move at once. I think it's very clear to us as a business that actually it isn't going to be kind of one size fits all, unfortunately, and as Greg pointed out, unfortunately some businesses won't come back from this. You've got businesses who are going to have to handle things differently. You've got businesses who have absolutely had to handle things differently, and we've seen a real shift in what customers want help with as well. So whereas typically they might have just come to you for very basic things in the past, they're like, we're not quite sure where to turn now, can you help me? So you very much become a customer friend and a customer advocate, more so than probably you would have been previously. Yeah,
and that's a really important point. I might just throw that around for a second. Philippe, unfortunately, the line dropped off slightly at the end of your last point, but talking about the vulnerable customers and the need for financial support, what sort of thing do you think is coming through, if you can answer that, in terms of the support needed? Is it all financial? Is it more about ongoing maintenance? What sort of thing do you think is needed right now?
Well, I think that our customers want more physical contact. And that's the reason why during the crisis, we repurpose our field force in order to deliver, especially for the customers with prepayment meters, to deliver keys to top up their meters, because they were self-isolating, they were not able, to go to the shop. So it was incredibly important to repurpose our field force to make those deliveries available. And the great learning from that is that we went to bring not only keys to top up meters, but also medicines. And we have a cheap partnership with Boots, Avicenna, Lloyd's, a pharmacy in order to deliver medicines to elderly people and safe-isolated people. So it has been a great broadening of the range of services that we could provide to our customers.
Yeah. And that range, Neil, look, let's talk strategy for a second. The long-term strategy, digital transformation, if nothing else, certainly customer contact strategies have been brought into quick focus right now. There's been so much going on. I suppose, strategy has become operational. So how do you tailor your strategy now?
Yeah, and I think you can kind of get a bit kind of in the weeds and around strategy and spend a long time thinking about what you can do, should do, without actually kind of doing anything. And I think the crisis really has challenged businesses just to truly think differently about how they operate and how they go to market and how they connect with customers. The first thing is, do you have any kind of strategy? Do you understand it? Does the company understand it? And I think really there are a couple of dimensions to this for me. One is like the company is trying to do something. Your business has desired outcomes, but are you also bringing in your desired outcomes for your customers? Are you bringing that into your customer strategy? And for me, if we're going to make this practical, I would say there's probably 10 things to consider at a really high level when you think about your communication strategy. One, make sure your customer's at the center of it, whatever you decide to do. Be authentic, be relevant, be succinct. Definitely consider timing. Just think about everything that's going on in people's lives and don't just bombard people with stuff.
Yeah.
Joe spoke about personalization at the top of the call. I think that's a key element, and we'll talk about a bit more about that. I think one thing companies forget to do is that they have a view of the us out. Think about how are you going to respond to customers? How are you going to interact with them when they come back? Yeah. Make it easy for customers to interact with you. Maintain that dialogue, and from our perspective, we would say change a communication into a conversation. Make it two-way.
Yeah, look, actually, Joe, I'll go to you on this one briefly. Is that look, conversations are born from a good relationship. People will talk with you. They will have a conversation with you if they want to spend a bit of time with you. So relationship needs to be better. There is a point right now where actually relationship has had to be a bit closer, but sometimes we all know that we don't choose our families, we choose our friends. So we don't necessarily want to be that close. But Joe, look, in terms of that conversation, in terms of that relationship, what else do you think we're missing, or could we capitalize on right now as an industry?
Yeah, I think actually just reflecting on some of the conversation earlier, so to Greg's point was around, I think we've all been forced, not just within our industry, but across all service, switchboard and equally businesses, to get ahead, anticipate, what are the needs, what are the questions. Throughout for me, in terms of that conversation piece, is the human touch. So it's really interesting reflecting. So we've seen obviously an increase in customers going on and using digital channels, but we haven't done anything different with digital. Our focus has been on the customer human touch points. So actually we quite quickly defined what is our guiding principles during this time. And then the first one was around, continue to provide high quality water both now and in the future. Yeah. So all our decisions should enable us to continue to do that. But the second non-negotiable was around and be there to support our customers who need us the most. And that was not just our customers in vulnerable circumstances, but all customers. And I think the key piece is around customers. As we look ahead, both they've gone through a difficult time. We've got people who are going through furlough, potential redundancy, going through illness, but equally, there is the unknown still out there. So for us, it's been about how can we use this as an opportunity to strengthen the connections and the relationships. And so whether that's, we've seen phenomenal growth in being able to grow customers onto our priority service register, which allows us to help and support them in the future. Over 8,000 people signed up in just over a month, over and above. But particularly for me has been the supporting the vulnerable customers, the customers in vulnerable circumstances. I said that intentionally because I think what we need to recognise is it's not just the customers from a financial perspective. There's customers with a range of different needs out there, and particularly for us has been really targeting the communication. I think to Neil's point was around saying that we make it easy, but actually how do you have a two-way conversation? So the pandemic has allowed us to have it's brought everyone to a level platform to have a conversation about one thing, but not just the look on that as a negative, but what's that enabled us to do? It's enabled us to talk about how we can help, how we can support, what we're doing, how we're working. We've probably focus more on proactive communication now than ever before.
Well, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. And that deals with some level of uncertainty as well, because that conversation is open. But actually, Greg, I'll go to you on community, in terms of the role of utilities in the community. We know the physical role. And I can tell you that where I live here, we had them out. Somebody down the road had them out and they did a great job and they really worked hard. They are here physically. But is there a different role that utilities need to play in the community, with communications in mind, Greg?
Yeah, like a couple of quick things. I think, first of all, at the end of the day, people rely on us to keep their lights on and their gas flowing. And so every day of the crisis, however bad we thought the health situation was, we had to have teams who had access to PPE to go into homes of vulnerable people, conscious of the risk to both the engineer and the householder, to ensure that they stayed on supply. And I think the communications around that were critical, because you have to be able to reassure someone you've taken care of them before, during, and after the visit. By the way, you've also got to do the same for your team, because you're asking them to do the stuff that at the time, people were rightly scared of. I think since then, the other bit that happened though was, look, we're big employers. We've got hundreds of people who couldn't do their job as usual. We couldn't go into all of the business as usual home visits. So redeploying our people so we could keep them employed, keep them paid, but at the same time provide a useful service meant that we ended up, repurposing our vans as pharmacy delivery vehicles. We had our, drivers delivering food parcels to people who couldn't leave their houses. And I think we're still carrying on doing that now, even as business as usual comes back. So that role of large enterprises who've got a role beyond just the exchange of money for a service, but are a vital part of society, I hope will form part of the future.
Yeah, there's a lot of nodding on our panel for that. These are not only sentiments; they are practical ways forward to keep the business running as well. It's not just the people; it's actually having customers who want to be with you is really important. But Lissa, look, I feel like I haven't spoken to you for a little while. Businesses have been impacted in very unique, individual to them ways. How have you at Wave been supporting them? What does the business need?
It's not just about the business, to be honest. It's about the staff as well, as Greg says. So you've kind of got to start by making sure the staff are supported, making sure that they feel comfortable. So from day one, we made sure that everybody could work from home, and then it was about, right, okay, how do we communicate with our customers? What do they need that's different now to beforehand? We've had a lot of inquiries over the last week, which won't come as a surprise to any of you, around how do we dispose safely of ale? We're now looking at standing the business back up. How are we going to do that? What do we need to know about it? What are the other considerations we need if we haven't been in the office?
Lissa, can I ask you, maybe, without giving the game away too much, what key things are in mind when you're building up that picture? because that might be useful to people to think about. You know, what do I need to do in terms of getting business as usual, but then also then building up a, you know, this new plan to connect with customers and stay connected with customers in times that might be difficult. What do you have to look at?
I think you've got to look across the board, Lindley. There isn't a one size fits all. It's quite clear that, you know, there are a number of different things that you're going to need to consider. And I guess it's coming back to both Neil and Joe's points and Philippe's point earlier. You know, you've got to be able to connect individually with that customer. And as Greg says, you alter what you're doing to make sure that the customer knows that you understand what they need from you. So sometimes it's the really basic things like, you know, how do I access my online account? Where is it? Sometimes it's actually the practical stuff around, okay, so I'm now thinking about reopening my office. What might I not have had time to think about? So in and around for us in particular, you know, have they been in the office? Have the taps been run? Things like Legionella, all of those sorts of things that maybe they haven't had the time to think about, because ultimately they're not the experts in our industries, we are. So we should be sharing with them the stuff that we can to make it really easy for them to know what to do next.
It's that reassurance thing that Neil said right at the start. Reassurance is really fundamental to all of this, and communication facilitates, makes that happen. You know, it's very simple, plain English. You can't reassure people if you're not really listening to them and helping them to solve their problems. Philippe, what have EDF been doing to in these areas here? You know, we are talking very much still, you know, months after the start of this thing, about personal touch, about personalization, about really helping people to keep going. Is that what you've learned at EDF as well?
Yeah, very much. In fact, to give you an idea of what we have learned is the average does not exist. In fact, when we looked at end of April at the bill of our customers, in order to see and to forecast if some of our customers would have some increase in their bills, we made a deep dive, you know, into our smart meter data in order to better understand what was happening. And everyone was reading the papers, and the papers were saying that the average price increase was by 2%, but in fact, the average was not existing. The large majority of our customers were experiencing rather a decrease in their bill, but some customers were experiencing a significant increase. So we focus, you know, on the customers with the most significant increase, our campaigns, in order to design campaigns, to give advices to our customers, and to have a very personalized approach and touch to them, to provide them some help at those difficult times.
Yeah, and that sounds like you're feeding back in to their price points, you know, information about them that even they may not know. They may have better things to worry about. So actually, that's a supportive mechanism as well. In principle, Greg, I mean, we talk about personalization. We will talk more. We'll talk about engagement, although these terms sometimes are used to replace plain English that we're talking today. So I'm quite pleased that we're talking in this way. But how important, in principle, is it, Greg, to stay connected? The answer to that is one word answer: very, or extremely. But actually, you know, how do you start to do that and to really pay attention to that connection?
Okay, so I think one of the biggest things that comes out of this is, can companies trust their teams? Until the COVID crisis, most of the companies wouldn't allow a team member to take their mobile phone into a call center. And yet now you've had people working at home looking after customers, right? I hope you've learned from that, because the only way of delivering truly personalized service is to let your team make decisions about what is right for a customer and how they can best help that customer in those circumstances. As Philippe said, there is no average, right? So all those programs people have been undergoing to try and create highly automated applications of data. Well, I think what we really need to learn is everyone's an individual. And if you're going to really personalize, you've got to do it on a truly individualized basis.
Yeah. Individualized, Neil, personalized. Yeah. Does it really, we're talking really honestly today, which I'm really pleased about, but does personalization really build engagement? Is there a, you know, yes, we believe it does, but actually where's the evidence of the, you know, cause and effect?
Yeah, and I think kind of following on from what Greg was saying, I think that there's probably two sides to the coin on this. The human touch is inevitable, and we need to understand down to the individual elements, but definitely technology can help here as well. Personalization, it goes way beyond, the classic first name, last name, how old are you? We can really start to drive a different level of interaction and allow the customer to dictate how they interact with us as well. So you're moving from one channel to another on the same topic at the customer's pace as opposed to our pace is one great example of how we are understanding how customers want to communicate with us, what channels they want, when and what time of day they want to do this. Maybe they're a 3 a.m. person, and that's when they get everything done. They're not a 9 to 5. So I really believe that personalization, that level of information and technology and the human touch all together can really kind of drive a different level of interaction for us.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. The mechanisms need to be right, and personalization delivers good tailored mechanisms in order to listen at the right times and do the right things at the right time. But interestingly, we've learned so much about the personal touch and how important that's been across industries. And actually, just briefly, Joe, I'll throw it to you. The personal touch in the mix. Has that personal touch, which was all talked about, but possibly it was a soft touch thing. Now, is there a drive, do you think, towards leading with the personal touch, even if it's short term?
Yes, yeah. In simple terms, I think absolutely yes, because that allows you to then build that connection. I think what we've had during this period is probably accelerate all the plans everybody had around that. But it's okay; it doesn't have to be in a polished way. So whether that's it's an email, whether it's through video, where people are producing more videos with iPhones of people out in the field, that's okay. But it allows us to have a connection, which matters.
Yeah. We're just about 10 minutes away from your questions, so please do keep sending them in through the live Q&A field, which should be to my right-hand side as you see it, my left-hand side as I see it. Great, so get in touch, that'd be lovely. We've got lots of questions coming through. We'll get to them in just under 10 minutes time. Philippe, if we look at the customer service teams, how can they, they've always known what customers want, even though they've had volumes to deal with. How can trust and loyalty come through your customer service teams, do you think?
I think that Greg make a very good point, which is, in fact, if you want to build loyalty and trust to your customers, you have first, in fact, to invest in your customer service, in your people. In fact, you have to build trust and loyalty to your people. If you want to transfer, to communicate, a specific flavor to your customers, you have first that your customer service has to feel, in fact, and to taste this flavor. Basically, if you want to ease the customer journey, you have first to ease the way your people are working. If you want to use the data for your customers, to personalize the journey of your customers, you have first to use those data in order to enable the ability for your people, in fact, to have a very personalized conversation with the people. So I believe that, the digital tools, the data, everything, all those insights all the tools that we are developing today is in fact something which is really increasing the value added that the customer service is providing to our customers. And first, by enhancing the capabilities, enhancing the skills of our people. And that's the way I think we can build trust and loyalty for the future.
Yeah, in so many ways, they are the gatekeepers, aren't they? Sorry. Yeah.
So just on that, I think it's really interesting because I 100% agree with kind of like getting down to the kind of grassroots, the individuals that are on the phones or whatever channel of communication, interaction that we're doing. I think also not only technology that this pandemic has caused businesses to look at their technology strategy. I think as well, to get to that point where Greg and Philippe said we got to, at the kind of the individual level. Businesses also need to look at how we're measuring people and how we're measuring success, internally, because the old adage of you get what you measure. So if we're after quick response time to close something in 30 seconds, that's not going to give that level of personalized interaction, especially as Lissa was saying at the start. It's like sometimes people are calling up because that's the only interaction they have in this time, and they want to speak to a person, and to have kind of crazy, but different KPIs that drive a different interaction. I think hopefully we're all looking at ourselves as well, how we measure ourselves as well.
Yeah.
So Lindley, just in the spirit of the flow, right? A quick thing. We only have 2 metrics for our teams. One is customer happiness, and the other is efficiency, customer to staff ratio. And that's what they're measured on. Then all the ingredient parts become the ability to really fine tune and hone what matters at any given time.
Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. Greg, are you going around with a pair of calipers and measuring the width of the smile? How do you measure happiness?
Well, actually, we sort of do it. After every interaction, we ask the customer to rate it. And it's a smiley face, a flat face, or a frowny face. By the way, what they don't know is if they rate it with a frown, it gets escalated straight to senior management. Every single one of those ends up in my inbox. Now, I don't necessarily read every one of them, but they're all transparent and visible to senior management. The other thing is it's one-click feedback, so you get absolutely maximum rate, returns. But once they've clicked it, they can then add a bit of text if they want. So the whole thing really is making it effortless for the customer to tell us how well we're doing, and then giving the team as much freedom as possible to deliver the maximum results there.
Yeah, look, I mean, Lissa, without the boss, Greg, the boss, seeing the results of these things and seeing that when the smile's turned upside down, there's no point doing it at all. I mean, and this is all a drive towards keeping yourself honest. You might say authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the people. So very much in the same vein as what Greg's saying, I see all of our MPS feedback, all of it, every single bit of it, because if you don't know what's going on. But you've got to allow your team to have the confidence to know that you believe in them as well. So, one of our values is around people being accountable. You can't be accountable if your manager isn't letting you do that. Like, they've got to feel empowered enough to know that actually they can make the right decision for that customer at that time. So we've very much kind of moved away from sort of IVRs. We've never really had an IVR. We've got kind of two options on our IVR: press 1 to make a payment and 2 to speak to an advisor. We've purposely left it that simple because allowing the people to have that positive interaction with the customer actually will drive you so many more benefits back into the business, but ultimately we'll get a better understanding of that customer from doing it in that way.
Yeah, I think we're painting a picture, aren't we? Joe, what do you think in terms of the role of, look, we've talked about personalization, we've talked about engagement, we've talked about obviously the conversation and the connection. Okay, so when you're talking about the gatekeepers of your business, the customer service teams, in many ways, how do you start to integrate the tech more effectively? Because you've got to have that real-time-ish view of what customers need. It's got to be accurate, timely, relevant, and you've got to be able to then have that conversation. So it's a big question. We could talk about this for hours, but in terms of the key steps to getting tech and people together, what do you need to focus on or not forget?
I think the key piece for me is that it comes back to the people aspect. So that the technology for me should enable, it should challenge us to think around, can you use this in a different way? But it should enable us to be able to do what we're here to do, which is to have that great experience and that connection and conversation with the customer.
Yeah.
And that for me should be around. And the one thing we've learned a lot is around, making sure people are involved in designing the journeys. So actually the user experience piece is really key because it should be an enabler rather than a solution.
That was always a good idea, wasn't it? I mean, I've worked with the NHS over the years and they've been using patient groups for many years. It's been the only way really to get honest, sometimes brutal feedback in terms of what the business is doing wrong and missing out on. So that sounds great. Before we go on to the audience questions in 3 minutes time or thereabouts, can I ask, Philippe, what we've done this a little bit, but just tell us in brief what you've learned and what actually you'll take forward. Let's summarize very briefly from COVID. What have we learned and what should we take forward?
Well, first of all, what I've learned is that, giving a purpose to my teams has been incredibly efficient. And to be part of, to find solutions for people who are facing difficulties has been incredibly rewarding for my team. So that's the very first learning. And it has been incredibly powerful to drive efficiency, more human contacts, much more human touch in the relationship with our customers. The second thing that we learned is, as I said, that digital can be our best friend, can be the best friend of our customers, but also the worst enemy. On some of customers, we have to recognize that some of our customers need, in fact, some physical interactions. And the third thing is that obviously the average is something that is hiding, the forest. That's the tree which is hiding the forest. So we have to be very careful about the average. And personally, when I look, at the customer service, I prefer, rather than to look at the KPIs, I prefer to look at the complaints of my customers and to look at the reports on Trustpilot as an example. So for me, it's giving me a much more accurate flavor of what is happening, in fact, on the floor.
Absolutely. Can I throw one in there? Despite the challenges, despite the difficulties that continue now, we can cope, therefore we should cope. And we should have a better customer connection. Neil, in brief, what have you learned? What are you taking forward?
I think what we're seeing is that your existing customers are the most important things, like make your customers loyal, keep your customers, because as we come through this, they're going to be advocates for you, your company, how you reacted, what you did in this time of crisis. So I think from a customer side, we're seeing a lot of that. From a digital side, we're definitely seeing an acceleration to the cloud, to Joe's point, to Greg's point, and everyone, and Philippe's point around, technology can help accelerate you get to a point quicker as well. So it can be as useful to the other elements as well. So yeah, I think we're seeing those elements.
I could throw it around, but let's get straight into audience questions. It's been a big discussion so far. I hope you found the insights from our panel useful, possibly even surprising, really honest. But now it's time to hear from you. Don't forget, there's still time to submit a question using the live Q&A field on the right of your screen. So let's see what you have to say. Many questions coming through here to my screen. Let's have a quick look at a couple of them. Thank you to a few people on my list here. Nicola Birrell, thank you to Karen McLaughlin. Thank you, Nicola, you've written another one. Judith Packer. Samuel Sabu, thank you very much for writing in. There are others there. Judith Packer is there again. Okay, question here. This one's anonymous, but let's go for it. Do you feel that call times have increased as a result of the crisis by resolving queries or extended call times due to the additional emotional factors? Yeah, okay, well, that's a really interesting one. Now, hands up. Lissa, can I throw it to you? Have call times increased, just very briefly?
Yeah, I think they have for certain customers. I think some customers do just want to kind of have a chat with somebody about kind of the wider picture and what's happening with them. But that's okay. If a customer wants to talk to us for longer and they need to talk to us for longer, then we'll take that time to talk to them. Yeah. I think we've all alluded to it. The length of the call isn't the important part. It's making sure that customer feels that we've resolved whatever those issues are.
Yeah. Interesting question here from Nicola Birrell. Thank you, Nicola, for writing in. What action can suppliers take to proactively engage consumers, slightly misworded here, who may not think to as their supplier for help? Now, I think what you're saying there is, even if they wouldn't come to you as a first point of contact, how can you actually engage them? Greg, it's a difficult question. Can I just throw it to you very briefly? How do you step in and reassure, even if you're not the first point of contact?
Yeah, I think the first thing is companies should have been in this position anyway. Look, we supply people with a vital service that's probably their second or third highest outgoing. If we weren't already accessible, we were getting something wrong. And I think what we've seen during the COVID crisis is people who've needed it have not been shy actually to get in touch. The biggest concern is the people who've never before experienced financial difficulty and therefore literally don't know what to do. And so what we're doing there is really proactively looking for things like direct debit changes, direct debit cancellations, direct debit bounces, payment holiday requests that are automated, and so on. And then reaching out to those people with, back to the conversation much earlier, communications that have been designed to preempt what we think the problems might be and to give them really quick signposting, including, of course, the ability to talk to us. And what we've done there is we actually came up with a kind of proposal, which was we will not take any form of recovery action against any customer who talks to us about the problem, right? So what we're really trying to say is if you talk to us, we will promise we will look after you. Yeah. And I think that kind of really trying to help them feel it is good to talk.
Yeah, really
nice.
The
other interesting thing on that, just on that is businesses, it's like, do something that's going to surprise your customer as well. Like Greg, you saying right at the start, you turned your vans into food delivery, kind of doing other things in the community. I mean, that is massively powerful, just at a community kind of level. I think that's tremendous.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to hang up your stirrups and say, we're not trying to sell to you today. What we're trying to do is help you. Sometimes that's essential. It's sometimes difficult to believe, but that's when a real relationship comes in. Another question here. I'll throw this one to Joe, if you don't mind, Joe. How long, we're still adapting, right? But the question is, how long did it take the panel to adapt? Did you feel like your company was agile? Joe, with the mists of time of still fade, looking back, do you think that it worked well? Do you think there were things that you could have changed?
Probably two parts to this. So I think an interesting, so in a previous role, I used to look after crisis and issues management, and everyone has plans what to do when you get there. But actually what this taught us is around the plans for what you do before you get there. So everyone has a pandemic plan, but actually doesn't touch about this may happen, lockdown. Yeah. So I think what's really interesting is around you had to be agile. Everybody had to be agile. I think if anything, what this allowed us to do, we moved quicker in this period in decision making, in our responses. You know, I think everyone would say the same. Moving our entire contact center to home working in less than 2 weeks, without reducing any level of service we provide, without reducing opening hours or anything at all. We continued at 100%. I'm incredibly proud of what we achieved. Had we run that as a normal project, we'd probably still be defining the requirements. So.
Yeah. Very good. Final question I think we've got time for. We've rattled through a few, haven't we? Karen McLaughlin, thank you very much for writing into us. This is a really big one. We'll have to give it a very short answer, I'm afraid, Karen. How can energy companies ensure they adopt a sympathetic approach towards reclaiming debt now that Ofgem has given the go-ahead to reclaim sums accrued? Now, we've just talked about this in some ways, but look, going forward, when everyone needs an income, who can I throw that to? Any hands up to answer that one? I might go back to actually, Philippe, because you haven't spoken for a little while. Just in brief, Philippe, you know, how do you take the right approach, the sympathetic approach going forward?
I think that Greg has answered partially, in fact, this question. But what I would like to add is that we need to be proactive towards the customers. So in fact, when we see that there might be a bill increase, and the smart meters data are really great in order to better understand what is the trend of the consumption of the customers. And I believe that we need to build on that in order to be much more proactive and to prevent, in fact, the risk for people to be indebted with us. So proactiveness is really key. And afterwards, you know, the kindness, the care, and the fact that we are going to have the right tone when we are ending those conversations, those difficult conversations, is very important. But what is true is that we are facing a large cliff front ahead of us, and we have to train people, in fact, to manage that.
Yes, yeah, we will all need customers when the dust settles. Well, I'm afraid that's it for this discussion. Thanks very much to our amazing panelists and everyone that's submitted a question so far. I hope that you've found it as enjoyable and insightful and surprising as I did. Stay tuned for our next presentation. We'll be covering digitizing energy. See you shortly.